The cost of drug development has outpaced inflation by 250% over 50 years, with the average drug costing $2.3 billion to get to market over 11 years. Current data management solutions in the industry have very poor searchability and data access, and that makes training difficult, that makes execution difficult, that makes investigations difficult. We're trying to hit all those use cases and more with our tool there. It's sort of been likened with what's happened in AI in recent history as the discovery of electricity. What is electricity used for? It's used for everything. It's going to be used for everything, but we're trying to focus on these narrow verticals for operational excellence, clinical and manufacturing development and operations first.
Throw your hands up if you with it, drop it.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Explore the Opportunities with AI. Today, I am super excited to have John Walters, the founder and CEO of Sanai. And today we're gonna talk about reimagining pharmaceutical documentation and data management with cutting-edge AI solutions. With a career in process engineering, manufacturing, and R&D at leading biotech firms, John has firsthand experience in navigating the complexity of regulated industries. And so his vision for Sanai is to empower pharmaceutical companies with tools that accelerate workflow, ensure compliance, and enhance data integrity. I'm super excited to have John here with us. Last time we met at San Francisco Health Tech, which is so funny. So we did ask John to help us to guard our fruit basket because there was this beautiful table of healthy fruits. And then at the end of the summit, they give it to us. And we're like, we cannot carry it around. So how has it been and what's new?
It was great meeting you at JPM Health Tech Week. A lot of things were very exciting there. We were at the event to demo the capabilities because we believe that the best way to educate people, AI, specifically generative AI, can help with the regulatory and technical landscape of pharma is by having people see the tool. So just a little bit of background on the company and myself. I've been working in the pharmaceutical industry for the last 13 years, primarily in the CMC space. Started off with some of the larger and more familiar names like Genentech and Thermo Fisher to see how mature organizations run with top operational efficiency, and then really wanted to make a bigger impact and move to the Bay Area to start becoming more involved in the startup and SMB space for biotech. 8 of those in leadership building teams, focusing on scale up, process improvement, and bringing drugs to market. What I saw when working for these smaller companies was the existential threat they face by not meeting proposed timelines for clinical development, which takes a lot of work to keep milestones on track. Preclinical data coming out in time, filing paperwork for INDs and subsequent FDA filing throughout the clinical development timeline. It's getting all the manufacturing and supply chain in lockstep with that clinical milestone Gantt chart. There's a lot of complexity there. It took a lot of work to coordinate and ensure everyone was on the same page and meeting the same goals. What we found with generative AI is that by centrally storing the data and embedding it, efforts can be greatly reduced in terms of the friction that happens in the industry. What we're offering with our platform is FDA, CFR, Title 21, Part 11 compliant document control and data management layer at the bottom, but then adding AI functionality on top and a next gen query engine. Think of ChatGPT or Gemini, but trained on your data to answer questions with context analysis and citations. Current data management solutions in the industry have very poor searchability and data access, and that makes training difficult, that makes execution difficult, that makes investigations difficult. We're trying to hit all those use cases and more
Mhm.
with our tool there. It's sort of been likened with what's happened in AI in recent history as the discovery of electricity. What is electricity used for? It's used for everything. It's going to be used for everything, but we're trying to focus on these narrow verticals for operational excellence, clinical and manufacturing development and operations first. Once you access all of that data, it's very easy to generatively author first drafts of the documents that really represent these core milestones. Everything from your standard operating procedures and batch records at the most basic level that are coming from, user manuals, R&D protocols, and getting turned into GMP compliant documentation. We've already tested and been able to author first drafts that are very good of clinical trial protocols and INDs. The entire library of standardized documentation required from a regulatory perspective, data transformation from primary research into the legally compliant context they need.
Yeah, I remember I was there at the demo table with you and people coming out, especially if you're in like research and development and or even like students that are completing their doctorate degree and you kind of share what Shana can do. And I remember their mind was like blown. They're like, oh my God, like I don't have to have 100 tab open. How would you describe the current state of data management in the pharmaceutical industry? And share with us the main challenges companies are facing.
We've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. If you start at the beginning of that timeline, most of the data in these early stage companies is being stored in very traditional ways, like in folders on desktops. If they're being operationally efficient, these scientists will be storing the data in maybe Google Drive,
Yeah.
Box, Dropbox, something like that, depending on the use case. And for them, that's a huge win. But we're taking it from that start of the development cycle, post discovery, much further. One, those are stored as traditional file types. When we have our AI do the analysis, it's getting labeled and vectorized so it knows what department it's for, what the purpose of it is, what the relationships it is to the goals within the company as a whole, and how that relates to the initiatives in other departments. And all of that is stored in the database and can be leveraged. The model itself has a wealth of information from the last 100 years of pharmaceutical research. We give the ability for that to be vectorized into the database. So white papers, journal articles relevant to your field of interest can go into your research initiatives or leveraging data from the FDA, advisory letters, and case law, understanding what the entire publicly available domain knowledge is and tying that with your internal data is what we provide. We've seen impressive results from customers once the evangelism phase is complete and people are able to really trust that AI can bring you 90% of the way in terms of data retrieval, analysis, and generation, letting humans focus on strategy, judgment, and implementation. Doing all the fast reading, searching, and generation is where computers excel. And we're really trying to specialize into the roles that best suit their skill set.
It's so interesting and so much time saving. The traditional way is very complicated with AI technology. We're trying to optimize it. What specific AI technologies to enhance data management for pharmaceutical companies? Is it only for pharmaceutical companies or is it for
The whole life science ecosystem could benefit from this. Anything under the FDA or EMA were trying to marry the interface between scientific research and legal regulatory requirements. Those are both very deep technical domains that neither party is ever fully an expert in the other. The scientists are an expert in what they are doing and producing, and they don't have the time and bandwidth to become experts in the law and regulatory requirements, and vice versa. The AI helps bridge the gap in like the most advanced data management solution, something like Viva Vault or Master Control. When you have a full quality management system or ETMF going, there is no good way to search for the data. There is no good way to leverage that data to produce new analyses. The main purpose of these platforms is data integrity and security. They represent the transition from paper-based systems, which were a total disaster, people working out of file cabinets. They did a great job at digitizing, the workflows in terms of having a safe place to store the documents. And when you need to do an investigation, all the data is there. But the efficiency is not really there. And the ability to leverage it is not. We are trying to marry all of those. Either people use our data management system as a central repository, or we have integrations into current data stores. We can work with customers where they're at today. We integrate into Viva, Master Control, G Drive, Box. Most data management platforms have open APIs. We can import data from, extract content and valuable metadata, do data engineering so it's semantically searchable by users and can be leveraged for standardized document creation when making regulatory filing.
Also, it's like the floppy disk a day of data storage is probably now gonna be gone. But then you said that people still have to store the paper. Like, even for now, is it still required?
The vast majority of companies are using some sort of electronic data management system, but a lot of the work is still being done on paper. And so those are looking like scans, on an actual photocopier of the original paper records. A lot of companies will store the paper records for some time, but usually having a Part 11 compliant scan approved by the quality and regulatory department is sufficient for an auditor. However, the software doesn't have the ability to do any kind of accuracy check or leverage that data. It is just storage of the final product of the work. By implementing the kind of automations that we have, we are trusting AI to get us most of the way there with that work. Let me give you a concrete example. If you were trying to review some sort of manufacturing batch during clinical trials and you have this whole batch report and you need all the data, right now people would be manually inputting all of that data. Analysis on it is being individually copied and pasted into Excel spreadsheets, or maybe a more advanced platform like Jump if you need some deeper statistical analysis on some sort of characterization report. And then people are doing that. Now in our chat interface, if all the primary data is there, all the deviations, batch records, clinical data, you can do all that work in the interface. Pull data from this campaign for X, Y, and Z parameter, put that in a table, give me the min, max, average, standard deviation. We can do every function that is currently in Excel. Once the data has been pulled, create a report in real time, something that would have taken days or a week happening in 5-10 minutes. In the chat interface. Very soon, we're going to be able to produce visual representations of that data, like graphs. We were able to, last month, implement flowcharts because some customers wanted to visualize these processes. And so it can take any process that you have and visualize it with a flowchart, which is a bit of a showstopper for some customers. These are the sort of things we are right now trying to create Maybe if there was a flowchart, for instance, in Canva or PowerPoint and drag and dropping all these arrows, and we just automate that whole process. It's like you have this process, we will analyze it, and the computer draws all the different blocks and arrows.
That's amazing. Can you do that for marketing? I need something like that right now.
Do you want to do a test after this meeting?
Yes, that would be amazing.
It can do it for any
Oh yeah,
process.
because
If it semantically understands it in a
right,
chronological
yeah.
order, it'll
It
do
was
it.
just so fun
Yeah.
because I actually trying to find something like that as well for content marketing. I was like, that could use for it. So if a pharmaceutical company or just like, any company in general that want to employ Sanai to kind of enhance their data management and also like help with R&D, do they have to input, their data that they already have, or they can just start using Sanai, like just start it? What are the process?
So we're trying to make a big emphasis on customer success right now because people are learning how to use AI, and there is a lot of differential outcomes based on how familiar the users are with it. Prompting is a huge barrier. You need to ask exactly what you want. Computers are not so smart that they can intuit everything, although they can intuit a little bit more than you would think.
Mm.
But we're trying to train them in terms of how to use that. In terms of the data migration, it really depends on the customer, right? We can integrate with their current systems. We're doing that with some customers saying, we'll just make carbon copies of all of your data and categorize it within Sanai as you want, but you don't have to manually upload it. Some people want to do the manual upload and use that as an opportunity to reorganize their data by labels, tags, and document types. Being onboarded is an opportunity to finally rip that band-aid off and do that level up so that you're ready for that next regulatory filing or, documentation milestone that's going to be collating a large amount of data and putting it
Right.
into a submission. So yeah, I think we've seen different things with it. In some use cases, people working as consultants and contractors, especially in the quality and regulatory space, are ingesting all of the customer's data at once to do an audit. We've already seen 50% reductions in the time it takes to do an audit by using our software. Once all the data is in, every question they have is answered in the interface of our query engine with context analysis and citation. Primary source documentation
Right.
comes up as a citation with the actual answer itself. And these are for first time users. I think that 50% number could actually be pushed much higher once they get better into the flow of how to do rapid prompting and get the most out of it. It is a skill that is learned. There is a bit of a learning curve, but even with someone that has no idea how to do it, I think our first consultant in his 60s and not a computer nerd said it was helpful and intuitive. I think we've done a good job at making it
That's
mostly
really good.
intuitive at this point, and we're there to hold their
Yeah.
hands along the way
Yeah.
to make sure that they
Yeah.
have the
That
resources they need.
the advance of technologies there, the UX design and the simplification, the user experience is also important. So if you've got a feedback from 60 years old who are not so tech savvy and give you great feedback, maybe you guys done a good job. So that's really great. I also want to ask about automation that is, in the work, for Sunday's product. What do you think are the impact that you see it having on regulatory documentation process?
What we need to give the audience enough context to understand. So there's two parts of creation and review, approval. We address both separately in the platform for generation portion. You can think of it as a three-tiered primary, secondary, and tertiary data where you have primary data that's produced in the wet lab or operationally. Multiple portions of primary raw data get collated into reports with analysis. Ultimately, those reports get collated into evidence for the regulatory filing. And then there's the body of the filing itself. Different layers of abstraction, the data is being transformed to serve a new purpose. We found that generative AI, if given the right backend prompts, and we have a very sophisticated custom prompting architecture for each customer to meet their use case, it's able to take it through each of those stages. So from raw data to report, procedure, and then into the actual standardized format and templating of these regulatory filings, clinical trial protocols, clinical study reports that are the ultimate final output that shows progress as a company in the pharmaceutical or medical device space.
Okay, so it does have the process that are there that would help, in terms of regulatory. So I just know that to tap into this industry, it is highly regulated and in terms of data privacy. How does Sanai ensure? Is it HIPAA compliance or something else?
We are in our observation period for SOC 2 security. SOC 2 is the gold standard for cloud based data security. We passed our initial audit, and to get your
Yeah.
type 2, you need to ensure you hold to all the policies and best practices that allow for top data privacy. But that's actually not where we're stopping. SOC 2 is just the start
Mhm.
for us. Pharmaceutical industry is famously fiercely secretive about their data because their IP
Okay.
is their moat. We understand that. And so we're looking to go beyond SOC 2 and basic penetration tests, adding extra layers so that we really are the leaders in data security to ease concerns about AI. We do not retrain our model on customer data. Everything we use to improve is voluntarily given through our support system. We do not access your data. We do not look. We are letting you leverage your own data better and listening to your feedback to give you the best results possible. We optimize through other means than model retraining.
Can you explain to me what synthetic data? I remember when you do the demo and you was like, oh, it's going to tap into like synthetic data. Is it something that you guys, synthetic data is like something that you guys just, is it like an open source and you just tap into that data? How does that work?
No, I'm happy you asked about that because it gives validation to the hard work that we've done. We're talking about the synthetic data for the demo, right? And so what that actually means in practice is I've had to write all these documents before when developing these processes. We were able to produce a documentation suite of over 500 documents, essentially mimicking a traditional pharmaceutical company's
Mhm.
data suite. So right now, our synthetic data suite that we do our primary R&D testing on is a fictional pharmaceutical company called Sanai Labs, named after
Uh-huh.
us, with two products. One is a monoclonal antibody, the other a CAR T cell therapy done at two different
Oh, wow.
sites. We wanted to make it clear that you could manage multiple sites through our platform, different processes, and that we weren't a one trick pony. We have quality manuals, policies, standard operating procedures, logs, forms, deviations, change controls, CAPAs, patient reports and monitoring. All of that is in there in order for us to demo the product to customers
Oh,
familiar with the
gotcha.
basics, these data sets and how you can leverage them with our technology.
Okay.
And so we had to
Oh,
produce
that's
that manually. I think overall we produced something in the ballpark of 7,000 pages
fab.
of synthetic data so that we can show that this works at scale.
Gotcha.
And so customers have more, but for our internal R&D efforts, that has been enough to produce more than enough use case to validate and
Oh,
test
wow.
again.
I love that you guys just generate your own data to showcase the use case. Great idea.
You can't test an AI against nothing. You need some
Yes.
sort of data and practice embedding and labeling. Luckily, I had done that a lot. And so me and my team were able to come together and make a well unified and congruent process. Although we did intentionally inject some errors and mistakes to make sure the AI is capable of catching them as a company that is trying to promote better compliance and quality culture. We need to make sure the AI not only does not hallucinate, but also finds mistakes. So you can see it is excellent. It's representing the same data point. Don't agree. It'll find that if you're asking the system. It can see when the standardization and congruency between documents is not there. That is a huge effort that companies have to undergo every day to make sure their data and documentation agree with each other, because if they don't, then that's a huge compliance risk at the point of an investigation, to mention the product
Yeah,
itself.
that's amazing that you guys are doing like due diligence on your product. And this just shows that you guys do spend a lot of effort to make sure your product is working well. And yeah, that's amazing. So appreciate for all the hard work you and your team that put into you're not only solving this problem, but making sure that it's working properly. So I know you guys are preparing for a full platform launch. Are you ready to launch and what's Neo?
So right now we are in beta with our MVP, the document control and query engine, and close to releasing the document authoring module. The testing has been going well, but we like to be careful and we want to validate a large number of use cases. We don't want to come out with just one document type. So we've been putting that library of different templates together. Once that's out, we will consider this a more full launch and leaving the beta phase into a commercial phase. But we do already have customers. The tool is in production and being used in 6 different pilot programs, and we're deep into sales cycles. A couple $100 billion plus enterprise customers, legal complexities of a vendor review, but end users are completely sold and want to form long-term partnerships with us, which is great.
Awesome.
We are talking with more quality and regulatory consulting agencies every day that want to be using our software, not only to help them with audits, but also become sales partners and evangelists for the potential this has to massively reduce costs in the industry for compliance. We are very excited about all of these developments, and we're going to see what that yields. Expect early Q2, some sort of a launch party with the document authoring where we do a wider public demonstration of what the capabilities are today. If you're curious, you can always reach out to see where we're at now.
Do they reach out? Yeah.
Our website has our contact information, Sanai.ai. We've been deep in building the product, and so excited to launch our new landing page here in the next few weeks to reflect our current progress. Having said that, we definitely want to always be talking to more customers. Our customers so far have given us great insight into the directions the product should go, especially in the nitty-gritty features that you can't always think of as a founder. More people we can get this in the hands of, the better insights
Yeah.
we're going to be able to deliver to them moving forward.
What is that one new AI driven feature you're excited about introducing during your launch?
A large amount of attention has been paid by customers in terms of wanting to increase the different modes that the AI is able to adjust and produce, right? So I was talking about the fact that right now we're doing documentation and numbers. So we're supporting docx, PDF, rich text, CSV, XLS, data like that. But it's pharma, so there's a lot of visual data as well right now that is not
Right.
adjustable by the model. Everything from graphs to pictures taken under a microscope, histology, things like that that end up in reports. We're working with engineers and exploring a major partnership with one of the world's leading data labeling companies to start to get that visual data not only able to be produced, but actually interpreted at the point of ingestion.
Mm.
They're not only relying on text and tables, but the visual data itself. When that comes out, that's going to be a showstopper because customers really want that. And we're pretty confident that we can provide it. Another one we're exploring through that partnership is the ability to better interpret human handwriting. Unfortunately, a lot of work in pharma is still done on paper and then scanned and uploaded. A lot of people don't have the best handwriting. We're working on improved OCR models to ingest that data from executed documents and have that stored in the system without someone having to read over it and add that context. Because if it's digitized, it's no problem for us. But we're trying to be realistic that not everyone has fully gone into the digital age.
Sure.
So much of this data still is being recorded by humans in black indelible ink. We are working hard to support that as we try to grandfather that out and bring the era of fully electronic data capture in hopefully over the next decade. There already are methodologies to make that as reliable as putting something on paper, but it takes work and implementation, and sometimes people are slow to change. We're trying to be evangelists on that front to transform the way that data is done and moving everything more electronically while still recognizing that a lot of it is done on paper and seeing what we can do to help customers today with the data that already looks like that and can't be changed.
Yeah, totally agreed on the doctor handwriting notes. I can never read them. What advice do you give to pharmaceutical companies that are hesitant to adopt like AI technology to not only big data management, but almost like, overall, like you said, not all companies are tech savvy and still do it the traditional way. What advice do you have for them to transition into this AI driven world?
I think that is critical. So I'm happy that you bring that up. The current system, we've gotten a lot of successes with it, but it's broken and it's breaking further. The cost of drug development has outpaced inflation by 250% over 50 years, with the average drug costing $2.3 billion to get to market over 11 years. Many die on the vine because the costs are too high. And
Right.
we don't want to see that anymore. From everyone that has bought in so far, everyone from scientists to quality and regulatory professionals, operational excellence consultants have understood that this is the way this is coming and there's really no way around it. So the earlier you start to implement that competitive advantage, the faster you're going to get to market and the more effectively you will scale, the more money you will save, and the less errors that end up costing you tons of money with rework and things of that nature. In terms of those that are wary to trust AI, we completely agree. It is inherently risky from the start, but we have put a lot of work to reduce that risk massively to the point where it's also risky for humans to be doing the work because humans are also error prone. So by putting the citations and having the AI show its work and how it reached certain conclusions and being able to quickly verify the primary source data, that really solves the black box problem. Additionally, we're putting more and more controls and accuracy checks for better outputs. The way the law is currently written, humans are still responsible for the safety, efficacy, and quality of the products that are coming to market. So, what we're trying to get them 90% of the way there, maybe someday 99% of the way there, so that they're just doing the final check and can really focus on double, triple check if you have that bandwidth because you weren't spending all of your time collecting data and evidence, writing
Mm.
these reports and documentations, having to engage large numbers of consultants and professional writers to manage this project, then you have all the time to make sure that what you're putting out is exactly what you want to be submitting. We're trusting humans to be decision makers and trust their good judgment that they have from their industry experience and education, and really trying to automate the rote tasks that are below their pay grade and taking a ton of time to do. And
Right.
we want to empower them. If I were to look back on my career, I probably spent less than 10% of my total labor hours actually doing the science. The vast majority of what I've had to do is the logistics, paperwork, coordination, and management between different functional groups. Then suddenly there's this moment where you're like, this is a deep technical problem. We need to do an investigation, design an experiment. That's when I remember this is why I went into the industry. This is what I went to school for. So many people are having that
Right.
experience, especially
Mhm.
on the operational side, where execution is king. The better tools you have to execute, the more time you can spend on putting the best quality product forward, the best quality process with the highest yields, the fastest clinical timelines, designing strategies without being spread too thin. Most people in the industry are overworked because it's highly competitive. We need to empower them to do the parts of the job that they love and that they're good at, really make a difference in the lives of not just their company, but the patients that are waiting for new drugs to come to market for diseases which have either no good cure or no cure at all.
This is what we hope new AI technology to reduce redundant office work, paperwork, so you can focus on doing your job as a scientist. That's amazing. Talk to me about Sanai and what are your kind of your plan to, like with 5 years or 10 years from now, where you see Sanai, and how do you feel like your company can help, solving these solutions in the large enterprise pharmaceutical industry?
Yes, the long term vision is to have everything feeding into the central data lake. We hope to integrate with the machinery in the lab, whether it's a chromatography skid or bioreactor in manufacturing or direct EHRs in the hospital, collecting patient narratives and putting them through the entire data pipeline. We would like to have that entire thing managed through Sanai. There's a lot of opportunity to expand into other areas of the business that are contingent on this data, being able to coordinate the supply chain more effectively based on what the demands are coming out of clinical and the capacity out of manufacturing, allowing marketing to validate their marketing claims with the actual research reports and clinical data. Marketing claims are highly regulated. Overall, being able to connect that to budgetary constraints, if all the different invoices and purchase orders are coming in for all services and goods, it's easier to project total cost. If all of that is coming into the database, we see a ton of potential for next steps. On that last note, something we're really excited about won't be released in the first half of this year, but potentially late this year, next year, is we're working on creating a library of all the stakeholders in the industry, whether it's a raw material, consumable, or lab equipment supplier, different hospitals, clinical sites, partners such as CDMOs and CROs, and what all of their products and capacities help with strategic planning. If you know all the products and service providers out there, and those are also stored in the vector database, then you can plan your strategy using AI. We've done some early forays into that with our R&D team and getting some exciting results, but it's a Herculean effort to get the exhaustive list together. Not making any promises when that's going to come out, but if you're asking for longer term visions, that's what we see for pharma. If this works in pharma, then there's a lot of industries that have highly technical domain specific work that is interfacing with an equally complicated series of regulations. And anywhere that has that technical regulatory interface, if the strategy works for pharma, it can work for anything. It'll work for, aerospace. It can work for
Ugh.
auto, obviously for food. I think the opportunities here are really endless, but we want to focus on what we know because that's where we can create the most effective process controls to reduce the current limitations of AI, which is the hallucinations and levels of focus. We would have to hire new experts into those other domains. We're not ready to do today, but we could be ready in the near term if this is out to be a hit in our first target industry.
Definitely. That's amazing. Very ambitious. Lots of potentials. What do you think of the potential market, in pharma for Sanai?
Yeah, absolutely. Recent studies and predictions have shown that AI data management by 2033 could be up to $67 billion industry in terms of the revenue through the door. When you stop being a cost and start being a productivity and cost saving tool, the addressable market for it really shoots through the roof. A recent podcast I listened to from A16Z identified drug development as the biggest space for 2025 to get disrupted by AI. And they're right to think that because currently it is expensive to bring new drugs to market. Companies lose $2 million a day. They don't make it to market between operating costs and lost revenue and their IP patent life cycle is costing $2 billion plus per drug, some figures as high as 2.7 with only one in 250 that enter phase one coming out as a commercial product. Tons of wasted investment money on that front. People are paying up to $10 million in external fees for regulatory filings currently to make sure that it's done correctly. The cheapest would be for an IND at the beginning that still is going to run you $500,000 plus. And so at all these stages, there's just really astronomical costs that could absolutely plummet with this technology, and we believe they will. That should get customers excited, that should get investors excited. It's central to the thesis of the capital markets that they're looking for this solution, and we are delivering.
Is Sanai raising right now? Where are you guys in the
Yeah, we closed our angel round and now we are moving on as we leave this beta testing mode into the full platform launch for a proper seed raise. Pharma is a very low churn industry. Once they go with the software, it's like a marriage. You have to really mess up for them to not keep working with you because the data migrations are highly painful and
Mhm.
the retrainings introduce the opportunity for human error. So with that, they wanted long-term contracts and we wanted to give them that confidence. We have a healthy runway, but the more that we can give them, we can ensure that we're going to be with them for the long haul for their clinical journey. The market is wide open. No one has a working solution for the kind of technology that we're providing. Even some of the major enterprise customers that invested millions weren't able to get the same results that we've gotten so far. And so there's a lot of opportunity to have an aggressive go to market strategy here more than what we've already done because the market is wide open for the taking.
Okay.
People are waiting.
I remember talking to Nelvin, and he was sharing a pharmaceutical company spent $1 billion on developing AI technology. It ended up not usable, outsourcing it. So it does happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see how many people have tried and failed at this problem because it was too hard to reach the kind of scientific rigor and robustness that we have been able to accomplish. I think it speaks to the hard work and talent of the team that we've put
Right.
together, taking a very aggressive approach to not just doing this iteratively and accepting substandard results, but coming out with a strong product and continuing to develop from there.
I'm excited for Sunrise. How can people find you?
You can go to our website. Our contact info is there. If you want to learn more or book a demo, seeing the product in action has definitely been the most effective method to get people excited about this. And I love showing it off. So feel free to reach out.
Is it Sanai.ai?
Yes.
So Sanai.ai, and they can find you on LinkedIn at John Walters.
Yep. John
Awesome.
Walters, or look up Sanai on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you, John, for your time today. I've learned so much. So really appreciate you to break it down for somebody who's not in the industry to get a whole overall pictures of what Sunai is doing. So I'm really excited and can't wait to see where Sunai is going to be, like for the next 5 years or 10 years. So I'm really excited.